UFC Fight Night, Yan versus Figueiredo. The UFC heads to Macau in China. Fun fact, the most densely populated region in the world, per Wikipedia. We have a pretty solid card here featuring a lot of Asian talent, a lot of finalists from the road to the UFC competition. So this one should be really fun. It starts at like 3 a.m. in the States, depending on where you are. It's going to be bonkers, not for the faint of heart, but this should be a really good card and worth the early wake-up. Let's get into it. First fight is a featherweight matchup between Maheshate and Nick Motta. Maheshate is a younger fighter. He debuted at 22 a couple years back. Had some ups and downs. He's definitely a pretty dangerous fighter. He's got good size for the division. He's really powerful, but he gets caught a lot. He's taking on Nick Motta, another guy with a lot of power who's had a bit of an up-and-down career. He's coming off of the biggest win of his career over Tom Nolan, who was a big favorite in that fight, a guy who people had a lot of high aspirations for. Motta, I think, is just punches a bit harder. He's going to be slightly smaller, but I just don't really see that having a big impact. I think Maheshate leaves himself open a bit more than Nick Motta does. We're taking Motta to win this one by KO. And we're going to fly through some of these road to the UFC matchups that are taking place next, just because there's really not a lot of tape on these guys. First one is a bantamweight matchup between Xiaocan and Quang. Both these guys are finalists of the UFC or of the road to the UFC tournament. Xiaocan won his matchup with a lot of grappling. It was really close. I honestly thought that his opponent was a bit better. He just really out-hustled him. Quang, he actually debuted already in the UFC before versus Chris Gutierrez. Didn't look that great. I mean, he had a pretty strong second round where he was able to take Gutierrez down and control him a bit on his back. But besides that, he was really getting pieced up on the feet and never really had a shot. I really think Xiaocan is just going to out-hustle Quang. He's just going to dog him, push him up on the cage. I just don't really think Quang is going to have an answer for the forward pressure of Xiaocan. We're taking Xiaocan by decision. Next up, we have not a road to the UFC matchup. This is a flyweight match between Loner Kavanagh and Jose Ochoa. Both making their UFC debut, although all eyes are going to be on Loner Kavanagh, who had one of the craziest Dana White Contender Series debuts of this previous season. I'd say his was probably the second or third best performance, maybe just behind someone we'll touch on later. This dude is tough. Super explosive athlete. I mean, you can just tell looking at him. He hit super hard. He worked the body really well in his debut. Got a first-round KO in that matchup. He's taking on Jose Ochoa, who's debuting, who doesn't look like a pushover by any means. I think they're both undefeated fighters, but Ochoa looks like a guy who's going to leave a lot of openings. He's really aggressive in his own right. I think Kavanagh is just going to find an opening here and is going to find a KO in this matchup. Next up, we stay in the flyweight division for the road to UFC finale matchup between Nyamjargal and Tumendemberel. And he's actually taking on Carlos Hernandez, who we've seen in the UFC before. Hernandez has had some tough matchups recently, including Ray Saruya, Tatsuro Taira, really tough grapplers who kind of exposed him. He didn't really have an answer for the wrestling of those two guys. It's safe to assume his opponent, Tumendemberel, has not fought the best competition up to this point. But in his road to the UFC fight, which is really the only fight I saw from him, he looked really good. He looked solid on the feet. A lot of power. I think he can frustrate Hernandez on the feet. He's going to be in his home court versus Hernandez. So I think he wins this one by KO. I like his power, and I think this is going to be a pretty good matchup for him. Next up is a strawweight matchup between Ming and Feng Xiaocan. Xiaocan's a big favorite here. She's only 22 and is already 10-2. Really couldn't find a whole lot of videos of her fighting online, so don't really know what to expect here. I'm honestly mostly basing my take here on the betting line, which has her as a big favorite, and Ming, who I did watch a couple of her fights and didn't impress too much. She looked fine. I think we're just going to trust the odds makers here and take Feng Xiaocan by decision. In the flyweights men's division, we have a matchup between Kiru Sahota and DongHun Choi. This one is a really close matchup, pretty even on the line. Sahota is a really tall flyweight. He's like 5'10". He's going to be 5 inches taller than DongHun Choi, which will be interesting to see how Choi handles that reach. I like Sahota's style. I mean, he's always looking to deal damage. He's looking for finishes constantly. He has a couple of losses where Choi is undefeated, but I think he's been fighting the higher competition. I mean, he fights out of England, which I think MMA is a bit more established there than South Korea and some of these other Asian countries. It's going to be tough to overcome the reach for Choi. I mean, I haven't seen much on Choi, but I think he's pretty powerful. He certainly looks powerful, but Sahota, I give him the edge in experience. The height's going to be tough to deal with for someone who probably hasn't fought anyone nearly that tall. We're taking Sahota to win this matchup by decision. Next is a bantamweight matchup between Baergeng, Jieleyisi, that's one of the tougher names on the card, and SuYoung. Jieleyisi had to fight off a really aggressive wrestling fighter in his road to UFC matchup. Really got tested in that fight and didn't show me a whole lot. I mean, he was able to keep the fight on the feet for a good amount of the duration of the fight. So I saw a bit of takedown defense there, but he looked uncomfortable on the feet. Neither of the guys looked very good. And I just would have wanted to see more out of Jieleyisi. SuYoung, on the other hand, looks really promising. He's an aggressive wrestler. I think he's a better wrestler than Jieleyisi faced in his road to UFC matchup. I think SuYoung has fought in a bit more established competition. He looks pretty comfortable on the feet. And again, he's super quick with his takedowns. I think that could give Jieleyisi some issues. We're taking SuYoung by decision. I think he's going to frustrate Jieleyisi. Next up, we have, I believe, the first fight on the main card, or maybe this is just the main event of the prelims. It is a light heavyweight match between Zhang, Mingyang, and Ozzy Diaz. A couple of big boys. This fight is not going the distance. It probably won't make it out of the first round, honestly. These type of matchups, bigger, lumbering guys, which, I think Mingyang is the stiffer guy in this matchup. I mean, Ozzy Diaz looks like a really, really athletic. I mean, he's quick. His most recent win was a flying knee KO, which you just don't really see from guys that big. And he looks like he has pretty good KO, but the size advantage, I think, is going to be pretty significant in this matchup. Zhang Mingyang is absolutely huge, has a ton of power, and in matchups like these, it's usually just whoever punches harder is probably going to get the win. I think Ozzy Diaz could find some success early, and obviously he's got a bunch of KOs under his belt, and he could hit Mingyang with something that could hurt him, but Mingyang is just going to be a lot more powerful. I think he finds the KO I think he just finds that KO punch much quicker. Ozzy Diaz has, he fought in the Dana White Contender Series, fought a power puncher like Joe Pyfer. Not many people hit as hard as Pyfer, but you could tell pretty early on in that matchup that he didn't really pose much of a threat. It was just a matter of time before he got clocked. That could be kind of the case here. We're taking Mingyang by KO, but obviously with guys this big, this powerful, anything can happen. Staying with the light heavyweights, we have a matchup between Volkan Oezdemir and Carlos Ulberg. This is probably my most highly anticipated fight on this card. Major title implications here. Oezdemir, he's only on a 2-fight win streak, but he's got 2 finishes against Bogdan Guskov and Johnny Walker. Oezdemir he's been around for a long time. Obviously, he was, flirting with title shots in the past. I think he did fight for the belt at some point. Super experienced, super powerful striker. I mean, I think he is, pretty solidly a top 10 light heavyweight in the world. He's taking on Carlos Ulberg, who I am very high on. I've kind of staked my reputation on this guy. If you've been watching the videos, you know that I've been, pretty much for a couple years now, I've been saying, watch out for Ulberg. This guy's coming, and here he is on a 6-fight win streak. I believe 5 finishes in a row, 4 KOs and a sub. He's looking like a juggernaut. This is a much tougher draw than it was looking like he was going to fight a few months back when he was matched up with Anthony Smith. Oezdemir is the much more dangerous guy, and, listen, we've seen Ulberg get hit. He got knocked out in his debut versus Nzechukwu, I believe. So we've seen him get hit, and Oezdemir hits harder than pretty much anyone he's faced up to this point. But Ulberg has just so much momentum. He really feels like he's on the cusp of maybe a title eliminator matchup if he gets a win here over Oezdemir, especially a dominant win. Ulberg is super skilled on the feet. I mean, that's his bread and butter, but we've seen him mix in grappling when it's advantageous to. He's strong. I think he's going to be the bigger guy in this matchup. But yeah, Ozdemir's got as much power as anyone. If this turns into a slugfest, I think I'd probably take Ulberg. I mean, he's shown how calm he is in those situations. Alonzo Menafield pretty much blitzed him last fight, and he ended that one real quick. So we're taking... holy voice crack. We're taking Ulberg by KO in what should be a really competitive fight. Yeah, could really see this one going either way, though. Next fight is a strawweight matchup between Wang Cong and Gabriella Hernandez. When I was mentioning some of the better debuts from the Dana White Contender Series earlier, Wang Cong is firmly up there. She might have had the best debut, finding a KO real early in that fight. I don't think Hernandez is going to have a much of an answer for Wang Cong on the feet. I mean, Cong will probably have to defend a takedown or two early, but if she's able to fight off one or two of those, I think that will pretty much be the beginning of the end. She is super powerful. Not many women in the strawweight division have that one-punch knockout power. That's pretty rare. She does. So we're taking Wang Cong to win this one by decision. If she gets another KO, though, expect to see her absolutely flying up the ranks. The UFC could definitely expedite her, ascension here because she does have a win over Shevchenko from years back. A bit of a Pereira Adesanya situation, if you will. So we'll see how that one goes. Next up is a welterweight matchup between Xiaocan and Muslim Salikhov. Pretty forgettable matchup. I never would have needed to see this, but here we are. It feels kind of irrelevant. Salikhov is 40 years old. Xiaocan is getting a bit up there in age. Neither of these guys is fighting for the title. They just kind of threw two people who a lot of people know their names on the main card here. It's hard to tell what version of Muslim Salikhov we'll see. I mean, he's good for like one or two spinning wheel kicks a fight, and sometimes they land and it's the craziest thing ever. And then sometimes he whiffs and you're just like, this guy's too old to be doing this still. So hard to know what we're going to see out of him. Xiaocan, both these guys are 2-3 in the last 5. Xiaocan hasn't done a whole lot recently. I mean, he had that Rolando Bedoya win. That was decent. I think he's the slightly faster guy. I think he's going to hit a bit harder. So we're taking him to defeat Muslim Salikhov, but not much stakes. I mean, who knows what we're going to see out of those two. Our co-main event is a strawweight matchup between Yan Xiaonan and Tabitha Ricci, though. This one has a bit more title implications here. Xiaonan, 2-3 in her last 5, but one of those fights obviously was most recently the fight for the title versus Zhang Weili, a fight that a lot of people ruled her out pretty much before it started because it didn't feel like she really should have been there in the first place. She was coming off of like 2 wins. She had the KO over Jessica Andrade, which really kind of sealed it, and it just felt like UFC said, hey, we don't really have much of another option here. Let's just throw Xiaonan over there. Let's make the inter-China matchup between her and Weili. That being said, I think Xiaonan's really talented. I mean, she's pretty tall, has good reach, and looks really good on the feet. The gas tank is definitely an issue. I mean, she surprised a lot of people early versus Zhang Weili. And, at one point she was winning that fight, but it was very short-lived. And after about the second round, she just got dominated the rest of the fight. I think Ricci can make it interesting late here with her cardio. I think Xiaonan's going to look a lot better early. I think she's going to find her reach pretty quick. It'll just be up to Tabitha Ricci to make up for losing probably the first couple of rounds here. So we'll see if she can make it interesting. Maybe mixing the grappling. We saw Xiaonan get controlled by Weili, but I don't think Ricci's nearly the grappler that Zhang Weili is. We're taking Yan Xiaonan by decision in that matchup. And now we have our main event. It is a bantamweight match between Petr Yan and Deiveson Figueiredo. Absolutely electric matchup here. One of the better bantamweight matchups that you could make right now. Let's start with Figgy. The guy has been an absolute revelation at bantamweight. Obviously, he was fighting, in title bouts pretty much in his last several fights at flyweight, but you felt that he was kind of losing his juice. The last fight versus Brandon Moreno, it felt like, this guy needs to make a change. He was showing up on the scales every weigh-in looking emaciated more than pretty much anyone else. The guy just couldn't make 125 before, and obviously the red flags, I guess, about him going to bantamweight. How's he going to deal with the size, the power of these guys? How's he going to look? And he's absolutely passed the eye test with flying colors. He looks quick, powerful. He's a little shorter than a lot of the guys he's been fighting, but the power definitely carried into bantamweight, and his record shows it. I think he's 3-0 by now. Chito Vera definitely was the only, I'd say, impressive win when you really zoom out and look at the guys he was fighting, but he looked super good versus Chito. I'm really impressed. Or no, 4-0. He beat Rob Font also. I mean, this guy's been... you almost wonder if he should have made the move up to 135 sooner. Again, the red flag, though, concern for him is how's he going to deal with bigger guys in the division. But Petr Yan is not one of those guys. I mean, he's pretty similar in stature. I think he's a little bit thicker. And Figueiredo, a guy who likes to work in the grappling. It's going to be tough to take down a guy like Petr Yan, but we've seen people do it before. Obviously, the champ took him down pretty much for 5 rounds, completely ragdolled him. Marab just had his way with Yan, but this is going to be a stand-up fight. I don't see really many people in the bantamweight division hanging with Yan on the feet. It's going to be up to Figgy to mix in the grappling, give him some different looks, because I think in a true stand-up fight, he doesn't stand much of a shot. But I'm certainly not counting him out. All that being said, Yan is just so skilled. I think he's much more active as well. Figgy, his biggest knock, in my opinion, my biggest knock on him is it has to be his activity. The guy does not have the best cardio. I think his cardio's improved a bit since he doesn't have to suck down to 125 anymore. But you're going to see long periods of inactivity from him because he's trying to conserve his energy. It's smart, but it's going to be hard versus Yan, who I think as soon as he gets a few reads on Figgy is going to put the pace on, really find his rhythm. I think in the third or fourth round, we're going to find a Petr Yan KO over Figueiredo. So that is the pick, and that is the breakdown. Thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that. And we'll catch you on the next one.